Hello, my name is Olorotimi Osha. Today is July the 29th, 2026. Today I want to switch gears in what I've been doing. I want to talk about pathways to business school and law school. I'm doing it on behalf of some of my younger friends who are interested, in going to law school. I have a friend who has a PhD. He's actually just doing his PhD. He doesn't have his PhD yet, but he expressed his desire to go to law school, and so I'm going to do this video with respect to that. And then someone else who graduated from undergrad, and she already expressed she's black. Of course, these two people, they're African descent, and they're interested in going to a business school. There's a young lady who is African descent, and she right away knows what she wants to do. She wants to go to Columbia, right? Columbia Law School and Business School. So she wants to do a JD-MBA at Columbia. She wants to be in New York, and someone else, right away, they're interested in working in investment banking. The person who wants to go to law school is interested in working in big law. So I'm going to do videos and talk about the paths. And for young people, I guess many young people are fascinated or captivated by the truckloads of money they can make as lawyers and investment bankers. Lawyers currently, according to Wall Street, make the most money. Investment bankers traditionally have made the most money of all the professions in America. People think it's doctors, it's not medical doctors. Medical doctors make a lot of money, but it's interesting. I saw something in my feed as well yesterday. A neurosurgeon who's he's a middle-aged man. He's still in his 50s, and I think he just turned 50 or so, and he did a video, and he said he's going to get into social media and podcasting, and he wants to travel. He announced that he was resigning as a neurosurgeon because these fields, they make a lot of money, right? Neurosurgeons make millions of dollars a year. But he said he wants to spend time with his grandchild. He has a grandchild now. He said he didn't have opportunities to spend time with his children, and so he wants to do that now. He wants to travel, and he wants to do other things, right? He wants to indulge in other interests. He wants to write. He wants to travel. So those are things. The sacrifices in time. That's what young people sometimes do not consider when they want these high-paying jobs in investment banks or as lawyers or as medical doctors. And yes, I'm going to indulge them, and I'm going to talk about the pathways to get an MBA and to get into an investment bank. And one of the things I'm going to do is use the guide of the backgrounds, the profiles of people who have traversed that path, people who are working in investment banks or people who are working in law firms, right? So something I decided to do, though, just to also not make it all glamorous, right? To make the young people who are interested in these careers aware of the scandals, right? It's like buyer beware, So because I woke up this morning and there are these scandalous stories concerning, these involving these careers, right? These investment banks and a law firm. So let me quickly read. So from the Department of Justice's website, there's a black American man by the name of Edward Gene Smith. He graduated from Harvard, right? Got his bachelor's in physics, and he went to work in investment banks. The last role he held was as a managing director the last role he held was as a managing director in Citi, right? Citibank in New York. He's worked as a managing director at BlackRock. Unfortunately, he's been sentenced He's been convicted and sentenced. He took a plea bargain, right? And he's going to spend 30 years at a federal prison for conviction for rape, drugging females, and raping them without their consent, and for child pornography and obstruction of justice, right? Trying to obstruct the federal investigations into his crimes. So, unfortunately, he's a Black American man, and it's rare for minorities to get into these prestigious programs. So he graduated from Harvard and he got his bachelor's in physics. He never got an MBA, right? But he's been a managing director at BlackRock. BlackRock is the biggest asset manager in the world. BlackRock, and the last position he held was as a managing director in Citibank. So let me quickly read what the Department of Justice's website says. Edward Gene Smith is a sexual predator and a serial rapist, said U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton. He spent years hiding behind wealth, education, and status while he committed egregious sexual crimes. He drugged and raped women, documenting his crimes with extensive notes, planning how he would torture, punish his victims, and surreptitiously photographing them while they were nude and unconscious. The defendant also obtained and maintained a trove of thousands of files of child sexual abuse material. The defendant took steps to hide his crimes, and when he was caught, obstructed the investigation by compelling a victim he had drugged and raped to sign a false letter of support. He's now where he belongs, in prison. Every New York family is safer with the defendant of the street. So this guy, he graduated from Harvard with a physics degree. He didn't do an MBA, but he made it all the way to managing director at BlackRock and Citi. These are prestigious, Wall Street firms. He's just 50 years old, but he's going to spend the rest of his life now in prison because he was sentenced to 30 years in prison, and he's 50 years old. So, other scandals. A reason why I'm doing this is I remember when I, was in business school, I'm always reading. So I read Liar's Poker. Liar's Poker was written by Michael Lewis. He worked at Salomon Brothers. Was a Wall Street firm. I don't know if it still exists, but he was a bond salesman. So he worked at an investment bank, right? So investment banks, they have bond salesmen. So traditional investment banking is mergers and acquisitions, M&A, underwriting. But of course, they have other activities, right? Other cognate related activities. People have to sell their products, right? So while they're not doing the core thing. So Michael Lewis was one of those, was a salesman, bond salesman. And so I've been a salesman at an investment bank, a firm that has an investment bank, right? Huge, whatever, right? So, but I'm not going to use myself as an example. I'm going to use actual people, that you can see in public. So Michael Lewis wrote Liar's Poker, and basically he's talking about, he's going behind the curtains and showing the scandalous lives of, in investment banking, right? In the investment banking world of finance, Wall Street. And other people have written books, Monkey Business. I've read those as well. So I read that as well, Monkey Business. So you can read some of these books and to realize that it's not just about money. There are lots of scandals. And even if you don't want to read these books, if you listen on the news, there's a recent scandal of the JP Morgan former employee. He was an investment banker. His name's is it Chira? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Is it Chirayu Rana? I can't. Chirayu Rana, yeah, Chirayu Rana. And he filed a lawsuit, and it's been going on now since last year. And he's now recently gone into federal court to file a sexual complaint assault and discrimination complaint assault against his former boss at JP Morgan, name's Lorna Hajini. I can't pronounce her name, I'm sorry. An executive director. And she and JP Morgan have filed a defamation countersuit, right? So they've said all his claims, all Mr. Rana's claims are fabrications and intended to defame her and the firm. So he was in investment banking. He was in leverage finance. Very impressive profile. He's Indian descent, Asian descent, Asian Nepali descent, and he worked at very impressive places. Interestingly, neither he nor Lorna Hajini have an Ivy League background, because that's just for young people who think they're required to have an Ivy League MBA before they can get into an investment bank, a top tier investment bank. Now, this is JP Morgan, and Lorna Hajini, the female defending herself, she's only 37 years old. She's done 15 years at the firm, been 15 years in investment banking. She doesn't have an Ivy League degree. She doesn't have an MBA. She got her bachelor's in statistics and finance from NYU, New York University. Stern School of Business is very good, though, so that's in New York. It's very good, but she doesn't have an MBA. So I'm just showing the alternative paths people have used to get in, because I had this discussion with the young friend who is bent on going to Columbia University and doing a JD-MBA. By the way, many people don't realize that although Harvard has the bigger branding, right? It's a bigger name. It's actually harder to get into Columbia Law School, or Columbia than Harvard Law School. At least I know, because I know two people who got into Harvard Law School, right, without even being waitlisted, but got denied at Columbia Law, because everybody wants to go. Most young people who don't know, who are applying, who want to have a life on Wall Street, in big law, in investment banks, they know New York is a financial capital. They want to be there. They think they'll have a leg up if they are at Columbia, because Columbia is located in New York. So because of that, Columbia is actually it's more difficult. It's harder to get into Columbia Law than Harvard Law. If you get into Columbia Law, chances are you got into Harvard Law. But because I've known people who got rejected at Columbia, they weren't even waitlisted, but they got into Harvard Law School, right? But the thing is, what's funny is, if you graduate from Harvard Law, everybody wants the Harvard brand more. All the big law firms, the big investment banks, the major investment banks, they want Harvard more, because Harvard has, they call it the H-bomb. They have a bigger branding, right? But the fact is, people who don't go to these elite schools, right, and get into these investment banks or big law, it's understood that they work harder, and they have people who are just as smart. They just didn't know how to get into Harvard, or they didn't go, they didn't have the desire. But many people know that there are people who go to schools that are not brand names like Harvard, but they're just as smart, and they'll work harder, right? They don't come with the sense of entitlement that comes with the Harvard brand, right? They'll work harder, and in the end, these big investment banks or big law firms, they want you to deliver, to produce results. So it's interesting. Like I said, Chirayu Rana, he doesn't have an MBA, but he was a senior vice president at JP Morgan, and he was in investment bank. He was in leverage finance. His undergrad is in finance, BA, Bachelor of Science, also in finance, from Rutgers University, a public university, a state school, right? Not even an Ivy League, not an elite private school, but a public school. And he made it, and he's very young. I think he's under 35 or so. He's young. At least he was young. He's younger than his boss, whom he's accused. His boss is Lorna Hajini. She's an executive director in leverage finance. Leverage finance is part of investment banking, right? A specialized field in investment banking. And she's an executive director. She doesn't have an MBA degree either, doesn't have a master's, just has a bachelor's from NYU, like I said. Um, so you have these situations. This guy accused, that's Rana. You can check the scandals. He accused her of drugging and sexual assault. She's denied it, and she and JP Morgan have filed a countersuit. But the Rana guy has a very impressive background. He was an associate at Credit Suisse in investment banking, M&A. He worked in investment management at Morgan Stanley. So you can move back and forth, investment management, investment banking. That's one. Once you get into these major big banks, right? You get your foot in the door somewhere. So long as you excel in your field and you meet the right mentors, they like to promote they like to hire from inside, right? Because they know you, and so long as they know your work ethic, that you're smart, then you can easily move into to investment banking if you're young enough, right? If you're young enough. So I suppose that might have been what Rana did, right? So he didn't go to any elite school. He didn't get an MBA, but he got to become a senior vice president at JP Morgan, right, in investment banking, or at least a vice president, senior vice president or vice president at JP Morgan in investment banking. Now, there are other scandals, like I said, that one sees again in these big elite firms. I also came across this scandalous situation with regard to law. So it's not all investment banks that have. It's not only investment banks that are suffering these sex scandals in the media, but there's also law. I read this article in the New York Post of a big law firm partner. His name's Nathaniel Cullerton, and he's a litigation partner at Wachtell, Lipton, Katz, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz. So it's typically called Wachtell. So it's the most prestigious law firm in the world. I actually had a friend who worked there for a long time. So it's the number one law firm in the world in terms of prestige. They make boatloads of money. So partners there make over tens of millions, $20 million, right? Loads and loads, multiples of millions of dollars. So this guy must have been making multiples in millions of dollars. I said was because he's been suspended. There's a viral video. It was a TikTok video that shows him kissing an associate, and I'm not going to mention the full name of the associate just to keep her private, or for her privacy, because she's young. So she initials are KAB, right? KAB, which is interesting, but that's KAB. But it's scandalous video of her kissing the married partner, and he's a married partner at Wachtell. Again, Wachtell is the number one most prestigious law firm in the world, and so he's been suspended, right? He's a partner. He's been suspended. She's a younger female. She's 29 years old. He's 45 years old and married, and they were kissing in public. And so someone took a photo of them, recorded them, and posted it on TikTok. It went viral, and he was subsequently suspended. So interestingly, so the number one most prestigious law firm in the world, Wachtell, people think, well, Wachtell only takes people from Harvard. Neither of them graduated from Harvard. The female is an NYU grad. That's the associate. She's an NYU grad. NYU has a top law program. It's ranked number 7, right? So for law schools, it's typically the T14. If you're in the top 14, right, you're good. Very consistent. So, and NYU, that's New York University School of Law, it's ranked 7th, and that's where the associate involved in the scandal at Wachtell graduated from, got her law degree from. And the partner involved, he even graduated from a much lower ranked law school. It's traditionally in the T14, but currently it's now ranked 18th. That's Georgetown University Law School. So he got his law degree from Georgetown University Law School, and his bachelor's was from a public university. So most people think that these elite, prestigious Wall Street firms, that they only take the elite firms, the elite, that they only take Ivy Leagues. The Ivy Leagues help, right? But don't think that because you don't have those that pedigree or those schools on your resume that you're automatically shut out. That's not the case. So none of these people, neither of them graduated from an Ivy League or any of but they're working in the number one law firm in the world, the most prestigious. Interestingly, the current co-chairman, who I guess would have signed off on the decision to suspend the partner, the litigation partner, that's Nathaniel Colleton. The current partner, he's a senior partner. Sorry, but he's the current co-chairman of the executive committee. So they're the ones running the firm. They're the ones who manage the firm, right? They're the executive management of the firm, of the law firm. His name's Edward Herlihy. He doesn't have any Ivy League degree on his resume either, and he's not even in the top 14. In fact, he graduated from my law school, George Washington University Law School, right? George Washington University, it vacillates. When I was admitted to law school, it was ranked 20th, but now it's ranked like 26th or so. But he's a partner at Wachtell, the number one law firm in the world, and he's actually the co-chairman of the firm, right? The co-chairman of the executive committee. So basically, he's running the firm, the executive management of the firm, and he didn't go to an Ivy League, not a top 14. Again, so from these examples that I've given, right? The examples I've given, like the Shirayu Rana from the JP Morgan scandal, investment banking. He graduated from Rutgers, a public school, a state university, and he doesn't have an MBA, right? He doesn't have an Ivy League degree, but he worked at JP Morgan as a senior vice president in investment banking. His boss, the same thing. Just a bachelor's, no MBA, and an executive director in leverage finance in investment banking. So you see, and then the partner and the associate involved in the scandal at Wachtell, you see they don't have any Ivy League credentials on their resume, but they're in the number one law firm, right? And one's a partner, and the chairman, the current co-chairman of the executive committee of Wachtell, the number one law firm in the world, right, graduated from my law school. He doesn't have an Ivy League degree on his resume as well. So there are alternative pathways. Now, that's not to discourage anybody who, especially a minority, a black person, because the Ivy League credentials help. That's not to discourage anybody who wants to go to an Ivy League. That always helps, and it opens more doors, but there's that sense of misplaced entitlement that can come with it, and the fact that if you don't get into those Ivy Leagues, it's not like make or break. It's not like, hey, that's the end of the world, or that objective to get into investment banking or big law is over. No. So I've talked enough of the scandals. I'm going to do another video and talk more about the MBA, the origins, and then the pathways. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.